What's up? Welcome back to another Web Dev Q&A where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. I think that's what I used to say. I don't know. I stopped doing intros a long time ago. But if you have questions, if you have blockers about becoming a web developer, this is the time to ask. We do this every Friday. The time continues to change, as you can see. But we had to bump it up an hour to noon. So essentially, that was when he was available. So we are going to be bringing on Scott, an old manager of mine, old boss of mine, who now manages, I think, hundreds of software engineers. I don't know. He'll do his little intro. But he's going to be coming on in a half an hour. Well, actually, 28 minutes from now. For now, we're just going to do a quick Q&A. So if you have questions before he arrives, feel free to ask. But what's up, everyone? Happy Friday. And Danny, thank you so much for becoming a supporter. Appreciate you. I think you're probably not even here. I think you just became a supporter a while ago, and it just shows up. But thank you. Yeah, what's up, Brian? How you doing? Glad you're excited. Gilbert, you are here early. Hello. Happy Friday, Miles. Welcome back. Plumbing. Nice indeed. All right, so let's go ahead and put on some music. I'm thinking some synthwave. You know what? I probably should load up Zoom, and then he'll just show up when he shows up. Dun, 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 dun.
Recording in progress.
Did you guys hear that? I don't need to record this. I'm gonna...
Recording stopped.
Sometimes I don't know if you guys hear stuff or it's just me, and then I make a weird... Oh, you did? Okay. I make like a weird reaction. You're just like, what the fuck's wrong with this guy? We're gonna go ahead and start video. And then full screen. Well, no, we won't do full screen just yet. All right, let's put on some music. Let's go. Gotcha. All right, royalty-free synthwave. But if you have questions about becoming a web developer, feel free to type them in chat. Happy to answer. Oh yeah, this is our Friday playlist, 100%. Hold on. Let's go. All right, let's toss this link in Discord, and then we are good to go. Today's a good day. I didn't get sleep again, but today is still a good day. All right, going live a half an hour early. Actually, let's just say I'm live for another Q&A. I went live early to answer questions before he shows at noon. To bring your questions. Publish. Confirm. Come on. There we go. All right. Pop out chat, and then we are good to go. So how's your Fridays going? How's everyone doing? What do you think of support engineer roles? Basically just customer service. Is that what it... Like, I don't really know support engineer roles. That's what I've assumed they kind of are. Probably a little bit of... Like, they probably have to know the product. But aren't support engineer roles essentially just customer service? They might have like a tiny bit of access to the app to like some sort of like dev tools thing, but I don't know. That's as much as I know. What do you guys know about support engineer roles? If I'm not taking my time to learn and not crunch with portfolio projects, is it okay for... What? This question is more tested how it looks to recruit. What are you asking? If I'm... Wait, hold on. If I'm taking my time to learn and not crunch with portfolio projects, is it... Okay, so you're gonna erase the word for, and you're just saying, is it okay, question mark. you should be heavily spending it with project work, reinforcing what you're learning. You're probably not learning as well as you think you are without that project work. What's up, Anthony? How you doing?
Hey, listen.
Yo, Anthony! 11 months. You are so close, my friend, to that 1 year mark. Wait, which hat do you get at the year mark? I forgot. But anyways, thank you so much for supporting for 11 months. Damn, that's crazy. I worked from home today to attend this stream, and now my mentor wants me at 1 p.m. Oh no, for a thing to work on. I can't attend this. That sucks, but you can watch it afterwards. Anthony, if you want me to ask a single question, like you've been here long enough, just DM me the question on Discord, and I can ask. And then you could watch it afterwards. As a career changer that has a BS in bio, recently graduated from a boot camp, should I exclude all experience, EMT, convenience store manager, research assistant, unrelated to tech experience? Include it as a job history. I think it's great to show that you've been active and you are a worker, and that, you know, like it can suggest even like questions that could be asked about those positions to kind of determine your work ethic, because that's been your previous career. So list them, just that should be taking a big chunk of your resume. Just showcase that you have had an active work history. That's important. I think I have a great idea to improve a non-dev influencer. A non-dev influencer. Is it okay that I recreate his or her website with the idea I had in mind and then offer to give it to him for free in exchange for exposure? Well, legally, is it okay? I actually don't know the answer to that, so this isn't legal advice. But morally, I mean, if you're not putting it on your portfolio and it's just a private thing you send to him, like I have advertisers that'll basically like create videos out of my content and say, hey, this is what I can do. We could break it up into shorts. You should hire me. Let's talk. And that's fine. I'm not concerned about any copyright stuff personally with that, as long as they're just using it as a proposal. But also, like, it's just spam to me. I usually just mark it as spam in my email. Especially if it's a generic email where like they didn't really make it clear that they do care about my videos. Like if someone approaches me, like an advertiser, 'cause I get a lot of spam. If someone approaches me and okay, what I hate is when people reach out to offer services. They're like, I love your content. And I'll ask them, oh yeah, what's your favorite piece of content? Talk about it. I want some feedback. And like, yeah, I love what you do. And like, it's a super generic response. And like, I think we could really work together. It's like, okay, you're just another company like mass spamming a bunch of emails. Like, no, that's not gonna work. So it depends on how you come across. That can be perceived as very annoying or not. Depends on the creator. So, but yeah, that's my answer. It depends on the creator. Support engineers tend to have a limited access to dev tools to help customer contacts, but it's a whole other ball game. I started in tech as support engineer almost. Do you mean it's a whole other ball game versus customer service? Yeah, you're welcome, Brian. What's up, Jessa? Happy Friday. Welcome. Posted in here about a job that I took a week ago. Total nightmare. Oh no, Saucy. Both I and the other new developer walked out after 2 days. Hid microphones and cameras in the office. Weird cult culture. Yikes. Yikes. That's really weird, Saucy. Oof. I'm sorry to hear that. What's up, Chaotic? How you doing? The list goes on. It was awful. If you leave or lose your job within 7 months, you owe back training fees. Oh, you're talking about you're like a Revature type model. Oh yeah, like if you're talking about like a Revature type model, that is, yeah, it can be a nightmare. My favorite piece of content is when you speak into a microphone, right? Yeah, like some of the advertisements I get are just so fucking lazy. I don't even respond to advertisements unless I'm interested anymore. I haven't been interested in anything. Everyone's trying to get me to like sponsor I don't know, like a lot of educational programs, and I don't want to do that because a lot of your educational programs, they suck. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I see YouTubers scooping up sponsorships left and right because they pay very well, and they're just like cookie cutter. Like, we can teach you how to become a developer and become like a data analyst and DevOps, and there's probably going to be like prompt engineer, you know, just like these cookie cutter websites that just try to spit out courses and make as much money as possible. I can't do it. I don't even respond to people like that. Any ideas on how to find a Power Builder developer or how to train a new one? I don't know what a Power Builder developer is. I just have no idea. Sorry, and to add, is it still better to leave a good boot camp off my resume as a career changer? No. Is it better? No. No. Here's the thing. It's like, if you're applying to a company, so it depends. There's no yes or no for that, actually. My recommendation is actually just keep it on, because there are a lot of really bad self-taught developers, and they might have had experiences with really bad self-taught developers. At least a boot camp can provide some sort of like benchmark, somewhat, especially if they've brought on other software engineers. But if it's actually like a high quality boot camp where students are really good at what they do, they get jobs, and they have a good reputation with different companies, then it can be a good thing. It depends on their experience with interviewing students in the past. You'd be surprised at how quickly hiring managers might have a bias against certain coding boot camps because they've interviewed a few students, and like that student didn't even like panicked when they were told to build a for loop. You know what I mean? So it depends on the hiring manager's experience on how they're going to interpret that. You can see it as a good signal if they've hired or depends how long they lasted at the company. Like, if they hired someone from a coding boot camp and then you see they were at that company for 2 months, it's probably a bad experience. If they're still at that company, it's probably a good experience. You'll never know. But my recommendation, usually just put it on your resume. No, it wasn't. It was an IT staffing. No, it wasn't. Why are you doing an exclamation mark? Chill out, Saucy. I had a small Android app of about 3K users. I used to receive a lot of agency proposing to improve my app UI, like, excuse me. Oh yeah, it's like, and then it's like kind of backhanded. Yeah, I get that with my search results. I get that with my coaching. I get that with my content. Like, everything could be better, and they can do it for me. I can't do it. I'm hopeless. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, they're my savior. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like customer service, but a different flavor. I enjoyed it way more than just taking calls and reading scripts. Felt like it was actually helping people with their tech issues. But like, you don't have to read a script, right? There are customer service positions where like you're navigating the product or you're looking into their account. I feel like support engineer that's just one of those positions where it's like, did you really have to toss engineer into the position? Like, I don't care a whole lot, but I think like sales engineer, support engineer, it's like, why do we have to put engineer on every fucking position? I think it's just stupid. It just seems silly to me. It just seems like customer service and you're a little bit more technically oriented. I just never, and like prompt engineer, we're just like overusing the word to the extent where it just becomes meaningless. Which is why I don't give a shit about the word itself. It's like, people will ask like, should I say I'm a web developer or a software engineer? Like, I don't give a shit. You code, you build whatever you want to build. You build products that the company cares about, right? Yeah, Brian. How difficult do you think it might be to master mobile development after having a solid foundation in web development? Easier. I don't know how difficult exactly, but it's probably going to be easier. It's easy. So once you learn a single language, a single programming language, it's a little bit easier to transfer into something else. I don't know how heavy the logic side is when you kind of just like build a really simple mobile app. I can't tell you how difficult it's going to be, but it's probably going to be easier. Maybe it's hard. So I truly find that, like, if you're really interested in learning something and you invest the time into it, the difficulty goes down. It feels easier when you really enjoy it and you really want to dive into it. And I think that can happen when you really want to build something. And so you learn what you need to in order to build that thing. I think that is a great way to approach a new language. Yeah, no problem, Brian. A chef is now a food. Wait, are you serious? Hold on. I don't know if you're trolling or not, Jess. Food engineer. Is this a thing? I would think like a food engineer is like someone that's kind of like hacking the chemistry of the food, or like, you know, changing the DNA of a plant. Food engineers design and develop systems for production, processing, distribution. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so it's systems, but like, there's no way a chef is called a food engineer. There's no way. I don't believe it. You can pay your staff less by giving a fancy title. I would argue that title demands more salary. No, you have more to negotiate with. Like if it's junior web developer, that you could pay very little for that. But if it's a software engineer, you have to pay more if you want to keep up with the market rate. You're going to get more pushback as an employer. I'd argue a fancier title means more pay. They've done the same thing with a word specialist. Job roles titles are just something I find annoying. They are annoying. I think they're helpful, but they can be very annoying. You know what position I don't really get? Like solutions architect. Isn't that like or just like some generic thing where like, whenever I dig into it, Ben, what's up? Whenever I dig into it, it just like, I never can fully understand what the fuck that person does. And then like when I hear them talking about like, I don't know, hiring practices and stuff like that, then I kind of lean into it and I figure out, oh, they've been involved in the hiring process, right? I feel like just people that get these fancy titles and get into this company culture that has these type of titles, there's this a bit of entitlement. There's this bit of, I don't know how to say it. Like, I don't know. They just think too much of themselves and they over advertise their responsibilities. I don't understand why people in some of these fancy titles do this. And like, even just in general, like I just see people get into like assistant director of engineering, but like they have no idea what the hell a good software engineer looks like. They've never had software engineer experience in their life. I'm a true believer in like earning a title like that when you truly get the experience of the people that you're hiring. It's just, some of these titles feel weird to me. I can't breathe, I'm sorry. I was just making something. Okay, I figured you were trolling. Well, like, it's believable enough, which is sad. So I had to ask. I wonder how many people say they are prompt engineers. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up right now. LinkedIn. Search prompt engineer. Please tell me no one's put this at, oh my, hold on. People. Are you kidding me? Software prompt engineer. Prompt engineer. Solution architect. It's always titles like this. Solution consulting. Okay, biomedical engineer is probably legit. Prompt engineer. I know this says, yep, prompt engineer. Okay. Front-end developer, prompt engineer. Please tell me this isn't becoming like a new thing. UX, oh my god, I hate people that put UX, like a unicorn, or like a web design unicorn. It just, fuck, I don't know. It's just so cringy. It's so cringy. I feel like everyone wants to be fucking special. Everyone wants to have the special title and feel so important. And that's not bad, but it's like they have to like present it to the world and they have to put that title out there instead of actually taking the action to get really fucking good at what they do. A lot of people that I meet like this are just overinflating what they actually are. I just like titles like this cringe. It's just so cringe. I don't know what to say about it. It's so cringe. Work futurist? Come on, you guys are just making up titles. Product evangelist. I've heard of product evangelist, but like there's no... Hold on. Work futurist. You're joking. Work futurist. Futurist at work. Who starts this? Like these fads, these titles. Who actually starts this? Can we disown them from the tech community? Futurist. For fuck's sake. Can we just start disowning these people in tech? Like, I'm a big fan of like calling gatekeepers out, but like, maybe we should bring gatekeepers back. Maybe we should bring gatekeepers back and just like start calling out this bullshit. This is so weird to me. Why do people have to like come up with it, like try to be creative with these titles? You know what? I'm just gonna say it. I think it's a Gen Z thing. Any Gen Zs in chat? I think it's a Gen Z thing. I don't think it's a millennial thing. I don't think it's a boomer thing. I think we have a Gen Z problem in tech. This is unrelated, but have you seen or looked at 100 Devs Bootcamp? I found a lot of people say they are a software engineer there and their LinkedIn page looked like an action. Yes. Yeah, Anthony, I've talked about that in length. You could check out Discord. I've kind of given my opinion about that. Yeah, a lot of people sell themselves as bullshit. A lot of them are getting caught too, not getting jobs for it. So yeah. Like you could probably just like look at my history in Discord. I've talked about it a bit. List 100 Devs is a company they worked for. Think done. Yeah, I did a resume review. It's in one of my resume reviews where it just smelled like complete bullshit. You could probably check that out, Anthony. It was I wish I could remember which one it was. I wish we could. They are making north of 200K for a role that doesn't add any meaningful value. Are they making that much? I feel like I've looked up like solutions art. So which role? So product managers and just like a lot of product creators. Product gets paid a lot of money, usually more than software engineering. I expect product to get paid more. Partner works for a startup, can confirm a Gen Z problem. Okay. Video, not resume. What? Look at that resume. I'm ready for the roast. Video, not... I don't know what you mean by video, not resume. But yeah, check out my live streams. I'm really critical of like resume reviews and portfolio reviews. You're welcome to check that out. Okay. He should be arriving within about 5 minutes. Yeah, everything looks good on my end. In your opinion, is a good cover letter worth it as opposed to getting more applications out in a shorter amount of time? 100%. Most of the time, templated cover letters are, in my opinion... Okay, Don, stop saying in my opinion. There's no reason to say that. Of course it's my opinion. templated cover letters are a waste of your time. I haven't really seen that be an effective use of your time in terms of the amount of people that will reach back out in comparison to not including that templated cover letter. Submitting a strong cover letter where you've done company research, right? Where you've like very clearly you know the company's values. You can point out you're a good cultural fit, and you kind of know what the direction the company is moving in, and your skills as a developer can help that company move in that direction. Like you've done, and you've shown that you've done your research. That's a powerful cover letter. That's worth your time. Templated cover letter, in my opinion, not so much. I gotta just cut that out of my vocabulary. Not so much. I can stay longer. My mentor had something to do. Yo, nice, Anthony. Nice. Very nice. That's pretty cool. All right. 3 more minutes to get any questions up before he arrives. He's probably going to be on time. He's usually on time. So any other questions? Any other questions? Have you seen anything on the Google I/O event from 9 days ago? They are going to stomp OpenAI a new butt. They are rolling out way cooler AI. I have not. I still, you know what? I'm just going to write that down because I do want to check that out. I'm at least going to watch Fireship's video. Google OpenAI. The work futurists is what... Oh, they get paid a lot. I'm referring to the ones at big mid-tech Google, Mike. So... you should get paid for the impact that you make at the company. And if they are crucial to the company adopting, like, new technology, new products, etc., and, like, if they're actually impactful, then maybe they should get paid that much. But I think why I feel cringe is like when people that have no experience, that have like, they watch YouTube videos on AI and call themselves a prompt engineer. They keep up with news on the future of tech, right? They just, drink their coffee and they hop on in the morning and they just for 30 minutes, like look at an article, and I'm a futurist. Like, I'll be honest, like those are the types of people that make me cringe and that put their title on LinkedIn. So maybe there's some legitimacy to the actual company positions. I don't know. Yeah, but I do think I need to clarify that. I don't know. I'm timing them out. They do. Anthony, I would even bring stuff up like that. Like, don't even give trolls ammunition. So question, I recently graduated and sadly feel like I am lacking in all aspects of software development. Any suggestions on how to gain some confidence in my skills? Yeah, build stuff. Yeah, graduated what exactly? You probably need to build stuff. That's where the confidence comes from. Reinforce what you've just learned. How to ask for a raise or deal for one? That's probably a longer conversation. I like Fireship. It feels very clickbaity. And he's just hopping on trends. He had a little bit of a fear mongering with the AI as well. Like, he knows how to grow his channel. I would say that part irritates me a bit, but he still does provide really useful information as well. Got it? Any resources on a good format for a good cover letter? Not a template? No, I don't have any resources down. I would ask ChatGPT to help you. Isn't there a company starting work on their own version of ChatGPT? Thought I read that somewhere. I don't. There are a lot of AI products popping up, I'm sure. Oh, he's in here. Hey. Okay, hold on.
I was like, who are you talking to?
Oh, yeah, so you're live, just to give you a heads up.
Okay.
Okay, all right, let me show the screen so they could see you. Don's talking to himself again. This is weird. Let's see.
It was a scintillating conversation with your microphone.
Yeah, exactly. This should be it. Yeah, there we go. All right, let me go ahead and do full screen and go ahead and do a quick intro for yourself.
Hey, I'm Scott. I manage our engineering teams at Numerator. Known Don for a number of years, so happy to be here. Happy to answer any questions.
Appreciate that. Okay. So if you guys have any questions for Scott, go ahead and ask him. You know what? Let's do. Let's break it up into like a Q&A section. Hold on. So how much time do you have for this?
I have a hard stop in an hour.
Okay. Start poll, start Q&A. Ask your web dev / career questions here. Okay, so if you guys have questions, go ahead and toss them in the live or in the blue box at the top of the screen. Sometimes it's a little buggy on mobile, but I'm gonna split the chats up so I can see it. But all right, so we'll kind of just, I guess maybe I'll let you look through some of the questions. Do you want me to hand you questions, or do you want to just have fun looking through some of the questions?
If you could share your screen, or is there a place I should be looking for it? Should check
yeah. Go to DonTheDeveloper channel, and then a live stream should pop up.
Which?
No, on YouTube. Sorry. So yeah, anyways, for some context, I might have put it in the description. Maybe I screwed that up. But yeah, he was an old boss of mine. We've been in touch for a long time. He manages a pretty big software engineering team. And so he's also pretty candid with his advice. So if you want candid advice, this is the live stream for you. All right, pop out chat.
All right, now I can see it.
All right, so if you guys have questions, click the blue box. Ask your questions. Usually takes maybe like a couple minutes to ask. Let's go ahead and do live chat. Close that. And if you guys have regular chat, feel free to just type it in regular chat. So questions in the Q&A box, and then regular chat in the regular chat. I know it's kind of confusing. This is how YouTube breaks it up. All right.
Am I looking at the blue box? Is that where?
Okay. So on the top left, you can open up two chats, but in the top left it says live chat. Go to questions.
I don't have that.
What?
I have live chat and I have top questions.
Okay, let me just ask the questions. I forgot about that. Only mods, I think, can see that. Or
For
maybe
what it's
not.
worth, it's like we have like a bunch of engineers in a room and like everybody's fumbling to get the video chat working. It's just hilarious, man. Technical issues, literally everybody. But
yeah, I carried over with me. I quit my software engineering job and I couldn't escape it. You're right about that.
All good.
All right. So, what specific qualities or experiences do you value when reviewing a developer's resume or portfolio?
Portfolio, resume. The first thing that I do, this is just something that I've been bit with in the past, and I also don't say it as a way to sort of deter somebody from it, because there's a market for this. But I do look at dates on a person's work history, and usually size that up against whenever they enter the workforce, and that's namely because I typically don't hire a lot of contractors. I do hire contractors for certain work, but generally speaking, when I'm doing recruiting, I'm not looking for contractors. And a pattern that I've seen over the years that's fairly reliable is when you notice that somebody's been job hopping a lot, that's not going to be a great fit for an organization like how I like to run my teams, which is that people stick around for a while, and it gives me time to invest in them and develop the individual. So somebody that's jumping around between like 6 to 9 months, frequently finding a new job, that usually indicates that, and it's pretty common with contractors who work time-based gigs, and that's just kind of the mindset, and that's okay if that's what you want to do. But for how I like to recruit, I tend to avoid that pattern in a resume. I tend to look less at the nuance of technical skills, and more just make sure that you're checking the bigger boxes. So in my current organization, we're primarily a Python shop, for example. I've hired plenty of Ruby developers, and we just train them up on the job. I'm a firm believer that as long as you're fluent in some technology stack, you can become fluent in another. You know, based on the strength of the candidate and how things go with the screen, it's not a drop dead on that you don't have that specific language or that specific framework, whatever it might be. As long as you have relevant experience that's in the same universe, that's perfectly valid in my book. An example where that wouldn't be somebody that I would consider for further discussion would be if I'm looking for developers of a back end built on a web framework, pretty standard job posting, and you come to me and all of your experience is working in mobile, or you were a firmware engineer for Motorola, right? Like big shop out here. That's probably not gonna be a good fit. It's not gonna have as much overlap where we can blur the lines between previous experience. But as long as you're within that general realm, you know, we're trying to hire a Django engineer, and maybe you've only ever written with something like Falcon, right, which is a Python framework, or Flask, or maybe you're a Rails engineer, you really haven't done much in the Python space. That's not a drop dead to me, not at all.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really confusing thing. Like, a lot of people have trouble, like, just deciding if I should put this on my resume. Is this relevant experience? And, like, how close do I need to be to the stack? So, yeah, that's really good advice. I'm just going to keep spitting these questions to you. How's that sound?
Go for it.
Awesome.
YOLO.
All right. What's up?
YOLO.
Okay, I love it.
As I understand, that's now a dated reference that makes me sound even older when I say it, but I'm just gonna.
What's wrong with YOLO?
I don't know. Maybe you're getting old too, man. Apparently, it's a dated reference now.
No, this isn't how you enter. You don't give chat this leeway to like make fun of you like that. They like I literally just got done with it, like a 5-minute speech about like kind of crapping on Gen Zs, putting like super fancy titles, trying to be super unique in LinkedIn, and like not the right skill. Like, it's okay to like give them a little pushback. You don't have to give them any.
There's the zinger. Grandpas do say YOLO. Grandpas also don't have a hairline anymore, so I can make fun of myself too.
Oh man, you're making this worse. All right, so do you believe data science roles are growing, and have you noticed this role grow in the real world?
Oh yeah. That's I hear AI is a hip new thing that's up and coming. It's huge. It's also very different from the computer science realm. And data science and machine learning are not necessarily the same thing either. There's really machine learning kind of sitting as the in between of those computer science and data science. It is a very rapidly growing field. I think if I was studying today to start my career, I would definitely have probably gone more of the machine learning route. But it is, like I said, it's a very different skill set. The other thing that I've been seeing happen is, as the industry is new and we don't really know what we're doing quite yet as it relates to pushing models out into production. This is all very, very new territory for the broader world. And so as the industry has been catching up on that and learning, what we've actually found, and I've learned this myself, is that doing things like machine learning, supporting data science teams, it's like 80% engineering. It's much smaller on the modeling side of things. Modeling is obviously critical, and folks who are very skilled in things like deep learning frameworks like Keras and PyTorch and what have you, like that is a hugely valuable skill. But in terms of the overall structure of a team, there's a lot of DevOps work that is required to support pushing these models into production, and that's where the lion's share of the labor actually fits. So I've seen it be a pretty decent gateway for folks who they want to get into machine learning. A lot of people are really interested in it. It's pretty cool technology, and obviously it's very exciting at this day and age. But folks who have an affinity towards DevOps tend to meld well with existing ML teams because they can get in there, start to understand a little bit more of that problem domain, develop some empathy, and then really start to build out some pretty cool solutions to help support those machine learning engineers.
Okay. I'll probably, and everyone asking questions, if you don't know already, click the blue box. You can ask your questions there. But I'm going to hop around a bit. Let's see. About technical interviews, recently watched a hot take about leak code questions. What I understood was that it was too irrelevant to real world problems that actually holds more values to hiring a dev.
This is the never-ending debate. There is a lot of truth to this statement, for sure. If I'm going to use an exaggerated example, I've looked at leak code before. I've seen it. I don't recall any off the top of my head though. But the infamous example from when I first entered the industry was that Microsoft would ask you questions like, "Why is a manhole cover round?" or like, "How many golf balls could you fit in the Empire State Building?" And they seemingly have no real. There's no application whatsoever to the role that you're interviewing for. And the same can be said about the highly algorithmic types of questions that you might see in a job interview. I am personally in favor of those as long as the motivation behind what it is that you're trying to understand is sound. It is very true. You will probably never build a queue manually in your day job. You will leverage them frequently, but you're probably not going to ever have to implement one. My stance is that there is an enormous amount of value in your ability to build a queue. I'm spitting out an example here. Because when you're debugging that off-the-shelf queue that you're leveraging, you should understand how it's actually working. It is important to know the inner workings of that machine. And there is a threshold there where it becomes inappropriate. Red black trees are a good example. That it's such an archaic, weird data structure. You're never going to run across that even if I use the queue example, you're probably not really leveraging them directly, at any point in your career. So what value is there in implementing something like that? It's really just kind of there to trick you and just make sure that, do you even know what the heck that is? It's a difficult topic. That's kind of going too far. But what I look for is a strong foundation, that you have very good fundamentals in terms of really just understanding the underlying, this is how my software is running, this is how it works. And you can do that through algorithmic interviews. Well, as I said, it's a sliding scale, so it can become inappropriate.
Okay. Okay, we're getting a lot of questions in, just to let people know, so we're not going to get to every question. I will prioritize member questions, because they do support the stream, but we're not getting a whole lot of those either, so we'll be able to do a lot more. How should someone who is trying to come out of a contract work approach theirs so you would consider them in a cover letter?
I don't know if anybody reads cover letters, I'll just be honest. I certainly don't.
Recruiters usually do, not you, right?
Recruiters do. There's automated systems there's definitely a strategy to that I'm not familiar with, to how you kind of breach that those early filterings. But it would never, a cover letter or anything like that would never make it to my desk. I think I've definitely hired a couple over the years. I think it's always been a very simple discussion. And if somebody comes to me and they have that resume where clearly they were job hopping, and you can see clearly from the resume that they were working for a consultancy or whatever it was, and that, clearly a contractor. But if it's strong in other ways where they got right number of years of experience and they have that realm of technical expertise that I really like, that I'm looking for that particular role, and it's worth having the next discussion, I'll just talk to them about it and just see what it is really that you're looking for. And it's always the same answer. They're just looking to settle down. But I've definitely hired more than my fair share of folks that are in that transitionary phase, and I can't think of a single one that ever ended up poorly. They always seem genuine in that desire to find this new thing and stick with it. So,
okay.
Not a deal breaker.
Good to know. Let's see. Do you see a lot of career changers from IT sysadmin?
Happens. I wouldn't say that I see a lot of it. It's it is a different skill set. And I would argue that even though it's surface level, you might think it's a natural path. I'd argue it's probably not. If you're doing a lot of IT and sysadmin work, probably doing a lot of scripting, which, certainly starts to dabble into typical software engineering, but it's still pretty far from building out a scalable web application, right? Or a mobile application or anything like that. You're still talking about very different things. So happens, but somebody that really wants to make that transition, I would say, is probably going to have to put in nearly as much work and effort into getting caught up so that they could land an internship or get through the interview process as anybody else.
All right. Do you check portfolios when determining who to interview, or is it really just based on resumes, especially for juniors with no experience?
Portfolios, I will typically look at them for a very junior level person because it tends to be where you have most of your experience. But in terms of folks that are further on, they tend to look less, and also they tend to show up less on the resume at that point. But usually it is a pretty good gauge if you're very early on in your career, and if the roles, or looking for a junior role or like an intern role, it's a great way to communicate what you're capable of and what you enjoy. It's been a couple months. I can't think of the specifics or the example, but I do recall in the recent wave of interns that we hired, I had somebody who specifically, based on their portfolio that they had there, they called out, like, you're going to school for this, but your portfolio, you're working on this. Like, we had a great conversation, just sort of understanding what the motivations were there. And it led into, here's the team, here's what the right fit is going to be. And we had a great conversation and ended up bringing them on. So it certainly helps. I think I've said it with you before, Don, that my advice for early engineers is always to write as much as possible. Just keep writing, get every idea out there, build as much software as you possibly can, because that's how you're going to get better. You're going to gain confidence, you're going to do better in the interview process, and that then bleeds into your portfolio. Those two things are very tightly related, for sure.
Okay. Love it. So many questions. I'm just having a hard time choosing which ones to pick. Will you, well, hold on. Let's pause that one. Do you worry that someone is overqualified for a role and a flight risk? I don't know what you mean by flight risk, but we'll focus on the first one.
I can answer both.
Okay.
Typically, I'm going to give an example when that might be the case. I mean, my motivation is to hire somebody that will stay and continue to work. And so if, I think, overqualified is a little bit of a loaded term, but uninteresting work, I think, is probably closer to where I would have filtered folks in the past than I have. If you're a game developer, right, that's a very unique skill set. You're probably not going to enjoy working for me. I'm just not going to have the work that's going to be interesting for you. And that, by proxy, makes you a flight risk if I were to bring you on. Not to say that people haven't made those transitions, and that certainly happened. I remember the early days of as mobile apps were kind of exploding, and that was where I was a consultant for a mobile company, and I hired a couple of developers who had been in the gaming market, and they wanted to sort of buckle down and focus on building apps. And I had a couple that wasn't for them, and then others that made it work. But it's the misalignment of interests and what keeps you motivated, I would say, better than overqualified, but it certainly is an aspect.
It's really insightful. It's one of those things where, like you started out with, like, what's an example where you would be overqualified for? And I haven't heard a lot of hiring managers share that, but it sounds like it's just a misaligned interest potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult industry to hire in. It's very competitive. So overqualified means you're probably very good. And so I'd still probably, as long as you're matching like what we're looking for, like I'm probably going to try to hire you. There's definitely been candidates over the years that I've sort of like myself just been like, oh, like it's the right fit, but do I have the right work for them? Like, is that gonna be the right thing? And in a number of cases, you still go for it, right? Because great talent is great talent. So I definitely wouldn't say you shy away from it. No, not for being overqualified specifically.
Okay. Two-part question. Do you find AI like ChatGPT to be reducing the amount of engineers you need? We'll actually just do that question for this one.
No, I'd invite anybody to try to replace yourself with ChatGPT. I've interviewed it. I've given it my standard interviews that I've given over the years, and it's done phenomenally well. It's incredible. Like the technology is totally wild. You see these Twitter threads and what have you of like, I built an entire app just with ChatGPT. This is the first AI built whatever thing on the App Store. Try it. You're going to spend just as much time trying to debug the inconsistencies between those responses than you would writing it yourself. It is not replacing developer jobs. It is becoming a tool that is supplementary to a developer's job where it can help you. Where ChatGPT is phenomenally good is if you've ever ended up in, think of any large framework that you could work with, any mature technology stack, you're going to have mountains of documentation, and it can be really hard to parse that, right? And one of the great things about these generative models as it relates to text is the ability to automate aggregation and to be able to pull a lot of that information forward. It's not ChatGPT doing your job to ask it a question about a framework and then have it sort of distill for you the answer to what you're trying to get to, either by providing a code snippet, and it could just be, hey, I don't understand this line in the documentation. Could you give me an example of how to use this? It writes that out for you, right? Or it's just, how do I do X in Django, right? Like whatever it might be. And both can lead to answers where code might be written, but it hasn't done a job for you, but it actually has enabled you and you've actually gotten a lot more done. That's where I've seen it be very beneficial. The other thing to keep in mind is that ChatGPT's terms of service, the chat interface, not their API, is not at all B2B friendly. So you are effectively giving away the IP of your company by typing your code into it. And so you can expect there's gonna be a lot more restrictions on what you can even do within your work environment for leveraging it, because it quite literally would be, if I was to take a code snippet from something and say, hey, this is giving me this error, tell me how to fix this. I just took code and gave it to ChatGPT that will be used to retrain it, which is highly problematic. So that's a huge no-no, a huge deal breaker for using it for any type of actual work.
That's a really good point. I had someone in my comments mention about the IP issue, and yeah.
It does not apply to their API. So they have a separate agreement for when you leverage their API that is the reverse. It is explicitly opt-in versus opt-out. And it's intelligent on their part because it creates a much better foundation for their business. And the API is how you'll tend to see that being used. But if your company is leveraging the API internally to help with aggregation or automation in any type of way, it's not replacing your job. It's helping you. So it's points.
I didn't know that about the terms of service with the API. That is actually, so they won't use that data to train ChatGPT.
Not if you're accessing it through that under that agreement. No.
Does everyone have that agreement with the API?
No. This would be their paid service.
Okay.
Which I think ChatGPT as a product as a whole. So I have the paid ChatGPT subscription. I think that one, anything you put in is fair game. But OpenAI's, they have a suite of APIs that they offer. There's a separate set of terms of use around that, and that protects you That is their paid service that protects you from anything that you put into it.
Okay, cool.
I'm not a lawyer, by the way, but this is what they tell me.
Sure. In your experience, what would you say a strong resume for a self-taught developer looks like if you are transferring from a different career path?
I would go back to my point about portfolio. A lot of projects, have a lot of stuff to talk about. It shows that you're motivated. I say this to a lot of folks that are early in their career, but like ones that don't work for me, because I can't tell somebody that works for me that you should be like writing code in all your spare time and like work. But it really is the way that, at least for myself, how I got myself to that point where I felt very comfortable from a technical standpoint. But that's what you're up against in terms of just the competitive landscape. Is if somebody comes in and has more experience than you, better experience than you, then that person is probably going to get the job. So you're competing with that. So you should be working to overcome that. And when you don't have any of the experience to call upon because it's your first professional gig working as a software engineer, the portfolio speaks volumes. And it's going to get you through that as long as you get past whatever those early automated screens are, and then you start going through an HR screen and things, some of the very early stage pieces, you'll cruise right through that as long as you have a lot to talk about that's relevant.
All right. A lot of good questions. Just going through some of them. Has your hiring been impacted by the current economic situation?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's I guess time's kind of a blur these days. Maybe the last year and a half, because you saw in 22 that there was a lot of folks who were like leaving their jobs and they were getting huge raises, and so that becomes a retention issue. Now we're seeing a lot of those people that are affected by these layoffs, which isn't hugely surprising. And so yeah, it's been up and down. For a period there, it's difficult to be competitive. You as an organization, you're trying to keep up and trying to stay with it, but it's hard to do. And then it swings the other way around. It's like, okay, now there's a lot of folks who are on the market. But yeah, I mean, we've certainly seen impacts from it. It's been kind of a crazy couple of years.
You got a compliment on your Gibson L5 in the back?
It's Les Paul.
It's what?
It's Les Paul, not an L5. I don't know what an L5 is.
Wait, that Gibson L5 on the right, pretty guitar?
Yeah, this is this. I don't know what L5 is. I've never heard that. This is a Les Paul 50s model.
What about the other one?
That is a genuine 53 Gretsch.
Ah, I think you're a bit off on that, Tim. All right. It's an L5 on the right and Les Paul on the left.
It's a Syncromatic, not an L5.
Okay. Swing and a miss. All right. What else?
The Gretsch trivia is hard. Kudos. It's a more niche brand, niche-ish compared to a Gibson.
Okay. Let's see. How important is daily GitHub contributions when applying for a junior role? Would that set them apart, or are there other things junior devs can do to set themselves apart for a front-end role? So I think like just that graph on GitHub, the GitHub profile, is it green? Are they constantly committing?
I've never looked at it for any of that. I've looked at GitHub profiles before. Sometimes I'll glance at them just to sort of see if you're active, but GitHub, as it's gotten to be, GitHub used to be like Facebook for developers. And it really was more of a social network, and it's kind of turned into something much bigger. And so as that transition has happened, I look less, but I still will tend to look at somebody's GitHub portfolio and just sort of see if, do you contribute to open source or anything like that? Is there an interesting story there? But this is by no fault of anybody. What you tend to see now on any GitHub profile is just, that one project they did in college or a boot camp or some other tutorial that they did, maybe they pushed up, and then not much else. So tends not to be as much value in those. And then anybody that's working professionally, you're very strong possibility that your organization is using GitHub as your repository. I cannot see your commits and how much work you're doing for your private company. So your profile looks very different to me. So you can be the busiest person ever, have complete green when you look at it, because inside your company's GitHub, you are committing like crazy. And then I go look at it on a public sense, it doesn't look like anything. So not a ton of value.
Okay. I missed this one. Hold on. What comes to mind when you see a portfolio with one very expansive project versus 4 to 5 minor projects?
It would depend on the context of the projects. It really boils down to, when you're trying to break in, it really boils down to what's the story that you can tell. What I'm looking for is, what problems have you solved? What have you had to think through? How did you come up with that idea? How far did you take it? So to use like an exaggerated example, if you've done a hello world in 12 different languages, that's a pretty terrible story to tell, right? But if you spent a year chipping away on the side at something that, you built it up, you really made a pretty robust package, you put it out on the App Store, you got some users, you got some feedback, you built some features based on some of that feedback, blah, 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 but it was only one project. It's still a pretty cool story. Even if it was a total flop, right? You made like $3 in ad revenue. Like, it wasn't practical, but it's a great story to tell. And so as it relates to volume, I would say it's going to be an in-between of those two. So a series of projects where maybe, you kick it around for a couple months and you have a decent story to tell about it, but obviously not as drawn out. Something you really dedicated a ton of time to is still fine, as long as you have a couple.
Okay. How much value does a CS degree have over something like projects?
It does provide a guarantee that, going back to my comment about fundamentals and having a thorough understanding of just the foundations of what it is that you're building, right? The way I've described this to folks in the past is it's like, I think of it like a race car driver, right? You should know how to change the oil, check the tire pressure, right? You got to know a lot about the car, but you don't have to be a member of the pit crew. You don't have to be the engineer that built the thing. And so you have to have that strong foundation. And so computer science degrees give you a leg up. And it's very consistent that I will see candidates come through that they have that versus a boot camp student, which was taught a series of skills. And the computer science degree, the person with the computer science degree will stand out further because they have that underlying foundation to work off of. Some boot camps, don't fit into that bill. And then I've seen self-taught people too that I've just been blown away. But holy crap, how'd you learn that on your own? So there certainly is a path people can take. But CS degree would, if I was going to say, this is the way, I would say that a computer science degree is the most reliable path to getting the necessary skill set to breach the market.
All right, cool. For junior applicants applying for a backend position, would you value some projects over others? For example, if one has hosted a live service game for 1+ years, like Clash of Clans, versus a website.
Hosting, I assume that the comment there is I host my own Minecraft server, or host, I don't know Clash of Clans, but
I think so.
That type of, go ahead.
The main question, I think, and a lot of people probably have, a lot of people feel like you can never get a backend position when you're just starting out. I'm actually going to change the question because I think this is probably what they're leading to. A lot of people feel like they can't get a backend position as their first position, right? Get it into front end, that's your entry into the industry, and then move into backend when they really love backend. They love working on the backend. So as an aspiring backend developer, what can they do to stand out? What kind of things can they build?
I would say build a web app with a really junky front end or no front end. I mean, that works too. You could just build it Like the UI, the UX for a backend engineer is your API, typically speaking. And so you can, that's actually a pretty cool talking point for a potential candidate where you can demonstrate that you thought through the design of an API. So when you get into a company and you're working with other teams and other engineers, and you're the backend engineer who's building out those APIs, it's a very tight relationship to a bunch of other groups. And so there is a lot to be said about the ergonomics of an API that you've built. How fast does it run? Is it very snappy? How easy is it to use? Do I have to make 10,000 calls to get some basic piece of information, or is it, very, very simple and straightforward? There's a lot to unpack there. And a lot of folks will spend the first couple of years of their career maturing in understanding how to build a good API. Do something like that. And, if you feel you need to show the full stack developers are less and less of a thing these days. But if you feel like you need to show that, the UI doesn't need to be pretty. Just throw something together. But yeah, anything with, it just has to be basic. Can you structure data in a logical schema? Can you fetch that data through an API that you've exposed? Come into the interview, fire up Postman and show me make some requests and how your API works, and let's talk through how you thought about that, structuring the data, and how you thought through things like pagination and performance and stuff like that. It's gonna be a great interview.
Okay. Sounds good. That's a big question. A lot of people struggle with it, and I think a lot of coding boot camps and even just paid courses, they really struggle to prepare back-end developers. And they're focused way too much on the front end. So they could basically just use like a CSS library on the front end and just toss something up that looks halfway decent and interacts with their API.
Totally. And from what I've seen of bootcamp curriculums, it's when it comes to back end, they usually just sort of throw a bunch of technologies at you, and it makes no sense to me. If you've got, what's the average length of a bootcamp? Is it like 12 weeks now?
Usually 3 to 4.5 weeks. Or sorry,
really?
3 to 4.5 months.
Okay, so yeah, give or take.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of time, and I've seen these curriculums where like you'll spend time learning like MySQL, which is great. Then they throw MongoDB and Redis at you, and that is like so inappropriate in that timeline when you're not exposed to any of those, and like nobody's hiring for Mongo anyway, so it's just a waste in my mind. But if a good curriculum would spend all that time focusing on MySQL, Postgres, something that is a very marketable skill, you'll get a lot more experience that way. And so I could see where that bias towards front end comes from there. There's just not enough depth for what I've seen.
All right, that's interesting. So Mongo isn't really being hired for anymore.
I very rarely ever see it.
Okay.
I'm sure somebody out there. I shoot myself in the foot. People are hiring for it. I have some engineers on my team now that like it, and I always joke with them about it. That Mongo's never the answer, and I hate to admit, like sometimes I've actually found good ways to use it. But if you're spending all the time and energy and money into getting caught up and building a foundational skill set that's going to make you very successful in the industry and allow you to permeate the industry, which is the hard part, I can't in good conscience say go spend a whole lot of time and learn Mongo. Redis, it has value. I would say you could probably still skip over that at the early stages.
Okay. What advice is best for networking, getting referrals into roles, like getting recruiters to respond on LinkedIn, or if we should reach out to VPs directly?
Networking events are great. I'm in Chicago. We have there's a number of Python user groups around here that I know folks have used to their advantage. It's mostly helpful just from even not necessarily meeting an employer directly, but you meet somebody who works for a company and then that leads to a referral. Like that's always great. People do reach out to me directly. I do respond. I would say if you're gonna reach out to somebody directly, make sure that you've found the role on our website. The common misconception is that I can just fabricate a role. Like, you know, you reach out to me and I'm just gonna find something. Yeah, it happens more often than you think. And this is not how it works. There's budgets involved. There's a lot of approvals that have to happen in any organization. Like, it is a process, and it's going to be much more of a stringent process the larger the organization gets. If you want to be successful at the cold outreach, assume you're not going to get responses from probably a lot of them, and B, find a role on the website that you feel like is a good fit, and talk about that. This is why I think it'd be a great fit for this. Love this role. Blah blah blah. And stay, stay relevant. I had somebody do it somewhat recently that I did brush off, and it's because he put a lot of effort into this this note that was sent to me, but like didn't even read the job post. And it's I don't know if you've ever gotten those cold emails from recruiters where it's like getting recruited to be an electrician or something. It's like, why? Like, no universe has ever indicated that, like, you've seen information that says that I would be like good for that role. Like, why are you emailing me about this? It's basically the same thing. And so like, don't be careless about it. Like, show that you actually spent some time looking into it, understand it. That is going to vastly increase the chances of a response. Even in cases when somebody does that and maybe the role's been filled, I'll still respond to let them know that. And to thank them for that. But you got to give a little to get a little, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I want your opinion on this. I want to expand on that. So I feel like over the past few years, maybe it's because my community has grown, but I've met a lot of aspiring developers who just don't read, who feel like they don't put a lot of effort into whatever they're saying. And it kind of just feels like a lot of people will try to just extract as much value in without giving anything. It feels like there's a surplus of engineers who, like, when I worked with software engineers, at Analyte Health or the other companies, it's like they always gave, they always helped other people, and if they had a question, they put effort into it. They try to do it on their own. This is what I did, this is, but like, I'm really kind of stuck in this area. I'm just not getting it. What are your thoughts on, like, they just put effort into the conversation, but I've had to ban, it's probably over, it's not over 1,000, hundreds of people that'll come into my community. They won't read the rules. I have like 3 rules on the YouTube channel. They won't read them. They'll come into the community, they'll ask some like half-assed question about like, how do I become a developer? Or how do I set up Mongo? Or, like, no context whatsoever of what they've tried, anything like that. It feels like that didn't used to be the case 5 years ago with a lot of the software engineers I met. Do you feel like maybe you just talk to engineers that you hire, but do you feel like there is a lot of people getting into tech that kind of aren't putting the effort necessary?
I've definitely heard a lot about that trend. I've seen a bit of it. Work from home. I think there's probably a lot of things that affect what you're talking about. Now, yeah, in teams that we worked on together, that was a great team, right? And like, we had really highly motivated individuals, and that's what made it a great team, right? And for me as the hiring manager, that's why I need to hire the right people, right? That at the end of the day is my job and why you do that. But there are bad apples out there. I think that a big part of it just stems from a culture of online. I can do whatever the hell I want behind my keyboard and basically pay no price for it. And so people will do that, and they'll take a bit of advantage, right? And then it becomes more and more pervasive. I'm sure you probably deal with a lot of bots too, where it's not even real humans, right? Maybe they're just coming in and creating noise, right? They're just gonna make the problem even worse. It's certainly a thing. I would say in terms of the actual workforce, how often have I seen people who really wouldn't just do the work It's less common. I could not tell you how much of that is filtered out during the recruiting process. It could be that there's very little coming through. It could also be that we're very effective at filtering it. Or I got a lot of people that don't actually do any work and I just don't realize it. I don't know. All these things are a possibility. But I don't see it a ton, but I definitely hear about it a lot.
Okay. All right, cool. I might have been projecting a little bit there, but I was just curious about your take.
How do you really feel?
A lot to vent about becoming a content creator. Yeah, that's one thing with the content creation. I've gotten more feedback in my entire life, or like in this span of time than I've gotten in my entire life. It's interesting.
Everybody's a critic. And, like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Are you seeing... I think I want to reword that. Are you seeing a lot more inexperienced developers apply in large numbers?
I haven't been hiring for junior roles in a while. We do interns every year, but we have specific pools that we source from. So I would probably have a biased response to that, just based on my personal experience. I do know that it has gotten a lot harder to get into the industry just due to overall overwhelming demand. And it required a lot of work to get into it when I got into it 15 plus years ago, back when I had a hairline. And it was still difficult back then, right? Like when you didn't have much experience and getting past that. But it's tough for me to say based on personal experience how much of that's changed. I would assume yes, but yeah. There's a comment here in the chat I want to address. So
sure.
Albert said this, that he's been, I don't see what was depressing, but I'm assuming it's my comment about MongoDB. He's been building MongoDB projects for 6 months. Not a bad thing. It just means it's a gap in skill in terms of what's going to be marketable for something like MySQL, where you're going to see that much more commonly used out in the world. Go back to my previous comment about, can you build an ergonomic API on top of MongoDB? That's still going to be super helpful. And that's going to translate very nicely over to something else if you want to start to learn another technology. I just fundamentally disagree with mixing 3 complex things, one of which I personally have the opinion is lacking in value over a very short time span, when if you were to spend 3 to 4 months studying just MySQL, you will never slow down in your learning. And that is going to be the most marketable skill out there. Mongo, totally marketable, just in different ways. I would just be smart about how you use it.
Okay, so that's good. You do have the chat open. I was curious about that. Have you been reading it?
Mm-hmm. Glancing as I can. It's tough to follow. I don't multitask well. Fair
enough. Okay, so feel free to ask any remaining questions in chat. He is probably like less than 10 minutes left. But yeah, I'm just spitting these questions out. I know they're getting a lot of value from it. I'll probably keep this live stream public too, because usually I make it members only, but I'll keep it public so you guys can review it afterwards. But if you have a question, ask in the blue box up top. Oh, it's a good question. 6 years of experience in digital. Sorry, I'm smiling for a reason. 6 years of experience in digital agency and freelancing, working with WordPress, everything from beginning buying domain to maintaining the website, but it looks like recruiters don't like that experience. So do you value the experience when someone's worked with WordPress for a long time?
So we could just like clear the air here. The reason you're smiling is because I was the guy that made you work on WordPress back in the day. Right. Hey, WordPress is an interesting one, right? There's relevant experience. I think it's niche. There's totally a market out there for WordPress, and there's a skill there. But you will find it's not going to open up. It'll open up a lot of doors, just not necessarily the right doors that you're looking for. You're not going to jump from WordPress experience to, I see folks talking about Firebase, which is a great platform, by the way. You're not going to jump from WordPress to Firebase, but Firebase very seamlessly. You're not going to go from WordPress to being an Android engineer or anything like that. So I think there is some headwind there. PHP used to be a much bigger player in the market, but it is died off in recent years. And so you won't have much to match on that end. Um, and like I said, WordPress itself is just sort of its own, it is a skill. And so it doesn't really transfer very well. It's great for contracting though.
So you mentioned Firebase. My advice, and feel free to correct it, but my advice for aspiring front-end developers is don't spend so much time in the backend, because a lot of coding bootcamps try to teach us full stack, and it takes so much time to learn the front end and back end. So my focus is focus on the front end to be a good front end engineer. Get JavaScript down. That's important. So my advice is also, if you want to build a full-fledged application, because sometimes when you're just using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript with no backend, you're not saving any data. It's not a super complex project. You can integrate certain APIs and bring that information in and display it in a unique fashion, but still, like, full-fledged applications where you can like build an authentication system and get users using it and coming back and suggesting features, like there can be more depth to the project with a database. So my recommendation is use something like Firestore, right? Or use like a relational database like Supabase. And those are serverless options. Do you find it more impressive? I guess like with a front, actually the question probably is like, what do you really prioritize with a front-end engineer? Do they stand out if they dive deep into the back end as well? Or can they just use something like a serverless solution?
I would probably reframe it a little bit. So I think you touched on a really good point that incorporating things like authentication, which is a non-trivial thing to add, that's something you can have a great conversation with, right? And you can do it purely from the front end, largely from the front end, if you're using something like Firebase. And this is why I love Firebase, because it really does, its batteries included, like everything you need is really there. And you can kind of focus on the parts that you care about. Be it back end or front end. I think what I look for in anybody is, and some of this comes with experience, so I wouldn't read too heavily into it if it's not where you're at today, but anybody who has a thorough understanding of all aspects of the application, I think is critical. Something I saw years ago that it drove me insane was mobile engineers that didn't understand a thing about networking. Tell me the last time you used a mobile app that didn't connect to the internet, right? And so if you're going to gloss over something like that, like you're really missing something critical here that you can't debug it because it's networking voodoo. It's like, well, that's the lifeblood of your phone outside of the CPU, and so understanding flows like authentication, I think, is hugely valuable. I think understanding enough of the back end to know what is a good way to retrieve that data versus a bad way to retrieve that data, right? If you're thinking about the front end, scale is a very quick thing. It is going to come up. Pagination, we all get bitten by it really early on, right? And pagination has additional challenges for how you're actually going to fetch that data from your data store. It's a really interesting problem, right? That's not going crazy into the back end of my mind. And in fact, you're going to have a better conversation when you get that job and you work on that team and you're talking to these other back end engineers that you're working with of what, how, and why you want this data set to be paginated. Helps you build a better front end, helps them develop a better API. So it's just it is on. You do need to understand how the pieces fit together, I guess, but not necessarily. You don't need to understand the inner workings of indices in Firestore. Don't see any value in that for a front end engineer.
Okay. Do you think aiming for ETL or SQL database engineer role is a good place to start, then try to get a backend role with experience? Are those skills transferable?
I mean, data engineering has become a pretty interesting niche. I think it's you'd have to do a little bit of work to shift from like an ETL engineer role to an application engineer. Those are two very different things. But you could easily find a career working as an ETL engineer. There's just so many companies that, self included, like you just push data around all day. and it's such a critical role. So I think it's a fantastic way to get into it. It's also because it's more of a burgeoning part of the market. Like there's probably a lot more opportunities out there. Whereas the backend engineer, the traditional backend engineer, is much more saturated in this day and age.
Okay. All right. So music is a bit loud. All right. Well, we're already so far into it. Yeah, I'm not gonna adjust it. A lot of really good questions. So I'm gonna give you an option. I kind of have like an off question that I'm just seeing in chat. Yeah. Anyways, so would you like to share? Because I'm just basically spitting a bunch of questions at you and you're answering them. Do you want to share anything yourself? Anything extra from what you've seen in chat, or would you like me to ask this final question? Either one is fine with me.
Ask it.
Have any successful devs who had have you had any successful devs who had attention deficit disorder? And maybe even like mention people who kind of just like might have had personality quirks or anything like that that have been challenging.
I have. It's difficult to go into details on what that is. But it's few, if ever, that were truly problematic. I think part of that is, I think it's important for a manager to be as supportive as possible. But also in a professional context, there's only so much that you can do. Like I can't necessarily address those types of problems directly, other than just be aware and respectful. So there's an element with folks like that who I usually find out about it because they maybe divulge this fact. And it's because they're working on it themselves. But within your comfort level, if it's something you feel comfortable being upfront about, transparent about, it does help a manager to craft, a way for you to be able to work that might be beneficial to you or more amenable. I've had people, this is from way back in the day, but folks who worked remotely before that was a thing, and that was to accommodate personal concerns, stuff like that. Like it's a tricky line though, because I can't ask directly. You need to come to me, kind of a thing. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I also don't want you to feel uncomfortable feeling like you have to say something, so it's a very delicate balance, but yes, can work around it. It should never be a deal breaker. Okay.
All right, cool. Yeah, you have a hard break. Scott, seriously, thanks so much for doing this. This was actually awesome. Went through so many questions.
Awesome, man. It was fun. It's always fun. It's good seeing you.
Yeah, you as well. We'll have to keep in touch, but yeah. Everyone, hopefully you enjoyed this. Like I said, I'll keep it live. We'll chat for a couple minutes, me and chat. But yeah, Scott, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day and happy Friday.
Awesome, man. All right. Take care. Talk soon.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
Okay. So what do you guys think? How do you like it? I saw one person didn't like the music. To me, the music sounded a little bit loud. Maybe it didn't match his tone, but a lot of people like it here. I'm never going to satisfy anyone with the music. There's no way in hell I am going to satisfy anyone with the music. I've understood that. I've had wars in my chat about my music. I've had wars. I've had to pick up a pitchfork and go to war. So, but yeah. All right. So great. Thank you for your time. Great. Oh yeah, we have like 96 people here. Okay, you guys have been hanging out. Thanks for keeping it public. Missed the first hour. Yeah, for sure. Good stuff. Was walking doggo. It's a tough market right now, so all right. The music got louder at the end. I feel like his voice gets softer. I don't think the music got louder. I think his voice got softer. Am I wrong about that? Well, I broke 100 viewers. Damn. Hey, it sounds like you guys really like Scott. Scott's a great guy. Like I said, I've known him. I'll be honest, like I had my reservations for him. I just didn't know what to think of him. pretty candid. We'll just say a pretty candid guy. In the beginning, I didn't know what to think of him, but like over the years, you know, talking with him more, I have a lot of respect for him. So it was a little loud towards the end. Yeah. See, when I asked it first, you guys are like, the music is fine. The volume's fine. And then it got a little bit louder. So I'm like, it's probably still fine, right? You can tell Scott is a genuine dude. I appreciate people like that. He is. Yeah. So here's the thing. You got to realize a lot of my feedback, it's no secret that I'm very, very blunt with my feedback, and I will trash a lot of toxicity in the industry. I will call out a lot of bullshit and this whole gatekeeper theory, and I will like call out a lot of victimhood. But you have to understand, I've met so many people in the industry who are really good people. Good, solid people you want to work with, right? So I know there are shitty managers. I know there are bad eggs, but I've just met an excessive amount of great software engineers that are amazing to work with. And I'm not just like blowing them smoke. Like, I made sure, and I weeded this out in the interviews, I made sure that I really want to work on this team and this would work out well. And I cut connections with hiring managers who like could be a benefit to me in the future just because I don't get along with them, right? Like, and that's kind of how you have to approach software engineering and the industry in general. Like, it's such a huge fucking industry, and you have to take the time and the initiative to go the right direction and meet the right people. And you'd be surprised when you put a little effort into it. You toss this fucking like depressing, pessimistic view on tech in general, and you actually just put a little effort into it to just interact with the people that you want to interact with. Now you start getting introduced to teams that also are awesome, and they want to bring on you. They love your personality, and you start like meeting more and more software engineers, and like now your entire view of the tech industry, it's very favorable, it's positive, it's not toxic, it's very nurturing, it's inclusive in a way that's like not toxic. It's just like, so this is my experience. I continue to meet really great people in the industry. So like this, people like Scott or people like those are the types of people I like talking to. These are the types of people I get a lot of good information from. So keep in mind, like, you have a lot of control over like what you experience in the tech industry. And if you are starting to head down a direction that seems pessimistic and toxic and you don't feel right in it, maybe you're just going down the wrong direction. You know, there's tech industry has a lot of room. Maybe you're just meeting the wrong people. So keep that in mind. Interesting, his take on GitHub. Yeah, someone did mention the idea, like, you can still see a green graph, I think, with private repositories. Once it's merged into master, you just can't go into the commits. So I don't know if he was off on that or not, but I think whoever mentioned that in chat was right. Definitely some good motivational, lots of advice with what to focus on. Thanks, very insight. Well, the music slaps. See, like, some people like the music, some people don't. I don't know. What if you're an introvert? I was an introvert. Jed, I am still an introvert. That should say a lot. Like, I am very much someone who is sensitive. I am very sensitive to feedback. I'm very soft-hearted. I'm very, like, when I go out in large groups, I don't like large parties. When I go out in large groups and have to go to networking events, like I've felt, you know, a little bit of anxiety. I feel like my energy is sapped from me, right? But one thing that I've learned is over the years, you can kind of develop a thicker skin. You can learn to interact, because like, if you don't learn to interact with the world and you just basically give yourself the excuse, yeah, I'm an introvert, there's nothing I can do about it, like, bullshit. There's a lot you can do about it, and you're going to enjoy opening up once you get those good experiences and good habits going. So I don't really accept this, like, oh yeah, I'm just an introvert and that'll never change, I'm just solo, how do I do, like, that's the wrong mindset to have. So I'm not saying that you have that mindset, but like, that's the mindset I have about me being an introvert and how I overcame that. Because trust me, personalities are malleable, more malleable than you think. Cool. All right. Anyways, if you like this stream, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. We're going to actually move over to Twitch. We're not going to stop. So I'm going to type it in chat. I did try to prioritize member questions, but I think I got like most of everyone's questions. Twitch.tv/DonTheDeveloper. go to that. We're going to do a live Q&A, kind of just like an after session for maybe a half an hour or so. So if you still have remaining questions, we could chat there. We could just hang out. But I will be live on Twitch in about maybe 5 minutes after I go offline on YouTube. But everyone, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being kind. It looks like Scott resonated with you guys. I'll see if he wants me to link his LinkedIn or not, but so you can check him out. But either way, thank you. Hope you like this, and I'll see you on Twitch in about 5 minutes. Happy Friday, and good luck on all of your projects. Happy coding, everyone.